Hello.
Hello, Kurgan.
Hello, Dave. Right, let me just get this in the right sort of
No,
spot. Okay, so I've told the people that I was going to do a little interview with you, and we're going to keep it pretty short because I can't stay very long. But I told them that the idea was that your assignment basically was to study up on some things that you think the Catholic Church is weak on, and give me all your bullets. And that on purpose, I didn't research anything, I didn't study anything, I didn't ask you what you're gonna try and hammer me with. And the reason for that, essentially, the reason we're doing this is to show, well, first of all, that Protestants don't count. It's gonna be the Catholics or Orthodox. And secondly, I also, I did let Dave know that we've got more than double the people that we had the last time we did the interview. So I've told him to comb his hair, and I've done the same. So so that we're more presentable. I think he might have combed his beard. So okay, I'm ready. Shoot.
All right, so I saw your video that you did the other day, where Rome has fallen. Now what?
Yeah.
I really liked it, and you were going on where you were like, we're gonna confront the priests, and I was like, yeah, and we're gonna we're gonna refuse to take the body in our hand, and I'm like, yeah, and you were like, and then we're gonna go to the Vatican. I'm like, no, like, why, when you finally break away from all that corruption, would you turn around and make the same exact mistake?
It's not for that. The reason that I would, if it were up to me, right? If I became emperor, pope tomorrow, whatever, or just emperor, it's fine. I don't need to be pope. I don't want to do all that stuff. But yeah, first take back the churches one at a time. Make city states. Eventually, take back the Vatican for a simple reason. It's a symbol, and
So,
right now it's the house of Satan, and human beings respond very strongly to symbols, to there's a whole oh, I forgot the name of it, but there's a whole study of I don't know if it's science or psychology or a mix of those, but about symbology essentially. There's a name for it which I forget right now. Umberto Eco was very clued up on that, which is why Vox likes him very much. Personally, I find Umberto Eco a little bit pedestrian because a lot of the stuff that he goes on about, I actually know about, but he's typically Italian, in my opinion. Umberto Eco is the typical Italian that has got a lot of knowledge, yes, but then he uses that knowledge in a somewhat deceptive way to try and sort of, show you just how clever he is. There's a bit of gamitude there that I don't really like. And if you dig deep enough, it's like, yeah, but, what about this? Now, it may well be that Umberto Eco was pretty well versed in it. I haven't read his stuff enough, and I didn't meet the guy, so I can't really say. And he definitely had something because he became very famous. But anyway, my point, I didn't want to go off at a tangent about Umberto Eco. The point was, the Vatican is a huge symbol. And if you look at the history of the church, the papal states, which eventually the Pope had to give up in order to retain Christendom, really. And it's been a bit of a bartering game. The reason I would take the Vatican back is to make it, like the same way I would take Antioch back, the same way I'd take any of the Middle Eastern churches back. Wherever the original Ephesian was, I'd want to take that back too. Make Istanbul Constantinople again. And it would be, if it were up to me, once we've done all that, that wouldn't be the end. Then I would go to Saudi Arabia and I would build a castle there, and it would be a fortress, and slowly I'd take them over.
yeah,
It would, because you have to civilize those savages, those mass murdering savages that beat their children for years just to make them learn the Quran, which is an unholy thing as far as I'm concerned. And anybody that's read it, anyone that tells me, oh, you're a racist, no, fuck you. Have you read the Quran? If you have not, be quiet. Because I know what's in that book, and I know what's in the hadiths. So, now. So that's why I would take it. It wouldn't be, again, I think I've mentioned this to you before, but if it were up to me, there's no way, right, that the Catholics are suddenly going to convert all the Orthodox, or vice versa, right? I mean, we might get a bunch of Protestants because some of them can be saved. The rest will probably go to hell or purgatory at best. But, when it comes to the Orthodox, you guys have got those long beard dudes who are just not going to budge. And we've got like hardcore, clean-shaven guys that are just not going to budge. So my approach to it would be, as a Catholic, I would say, well, Dave, you're my good buddy. You're my friend. I'll sit in the same trench. Of course, you're wrong because you're an Orthodox, and you poor Orthodox, you can only come so far. But I'll pray for you, and, thanks to purgatory, maybe one day you'll be with me in heaven. And I expect that you, from your side, would say very much the same thing. Probably the Orthodox would even say, actually, no, you're a Catholic, so you're going straight to hell. There isn't even a choice for you to have redemption, because I don't know whether the Orthodox believe in purgatory or not. I'm not sure.
They don't believe in purgatory as like a place. There's room for interpretation, however, on the possibility of repentance after death.
Right. Well, again, to me, that's biblical. Purgatory, exactly how it works, I don't know. But there's a passage in the Bible that clearly says everybody will be tested in the fire. So you will be purified in the fire. So to me, that's pretty clear, and it makes sense. I mean, like, what? Do you think, honestly, that any one of us is clean enough to just waltz into heaven? Are you kidding me? I mean, jeez, I don't know about you, man, but, I expect that I'm going to have to go through, like the samurai with the swords, a few thousand passes of the burning, just to cleanse out some of the major issues, never mind the minor ones. So, yeah.
Well, in the vein of all that, you've done, you've had a lot of talk about how the papacy has been invalid since Vatican II.
Yeah.
And I'm going to show you how the papacy, as you know it, has always been invalid.
Okay, just give me a sec, though, because I think we still have the audio problem. So maybe if you can talk a little bit lower and I'll talk a little bit higher, just because the poor guys are going to go deaf otherwise. So we're trying to improve it. I got a new microphone, but stupidly the microphone works apparently really well with my phone and doesn't work at all with my laptop. So I need to get some.
So, I've been trying to decide the best place to start with all of this.
Go for my weak spot, man. That's
okay. So the first place, I guess, would be that caused like the division between the East and West is the papal supremacy. Papal supremacy is something that originated from these documents called the false decretal. These are known forgeries. The Vatican has acknowledged their forgeries. But in there was something called the donation of Constantine, where he basically says, the Vatican belongs to the Pope, and the Pope has supremacy over the rest of the church. So they realized that it was fake.
What year was this?
The false decretals were written about between 750 and 800 AD.
Okay, so I'd like to point out one thing right off the bat of there. I didn't know about these documents, but as far as I know, that's sort of irrelevant because up until 1054, the East and the Western Church were essentially united, as far as I know. They had some arguments about, the filioque and that, but it wasn't like a schism.
No, I'm getting there.
Okay.
So 750, 800 AD, these false documents pop up. They say that, the Patriarch of Rome, the Pope, has supremacy over the entire church. And we later found out and recognized, and everybody says, yes, we understand these are forgeries. But the main argument from those was that the supremacy came from Matthew 16, where Jesus tells Peter, "You're the rock, and I'm going to build the church on you, and you get the keys to hell and the grave." They recognized that the documents were forgeries, but they kept the theology, and they worked backwards from there, trying to show how it was present throughout the tradition of the church.
Okay, but I don't necessarily have a problem with that. For example, there are documents that have been forgeries that have been, so, there's the best, like as Vox always says, the best rhetoric has always got an element of truth. So, for example, if you take the, what's it called? The something about the elders of Zion, right? That complete forgery about how the Jews are trying to take over the world and that. And it was an acknowledged forgery. However, there were some true things in there that which, make it makes you wonder, was it a forgery to be against the Jews, or was it a forgery by the Jews to pretend that everybody hates them for no good reason? It's like, it's hard to tell. Or, for example, there was another one that I was just thinking of now. I can't remember what it was now. That's right. The prophecies of the popes. So this was essentially a forgery. There was a forgery, I think it came around the 1500s or so, that predicted what all the popes from 1500 on were going to be. And it was originally created to promote a certain pope, that they wanted this cardinal to become a pope. So they made this prophecy to make that guy become the pope. But the weird thing is that, for 2 or 3 popes, it doesn't kind of work. But then after that, it really seems to work like really well. So it's sort of like, well, what happened here? So, I don't disagree. I don't know enough about what you're talking about, but I'll take your word for it that there were absolute forgeries. But that doesn't mean, if you read the passage, to me, I didn't know this, but when I read the passage about Peter being the rock, to me that makes pretty good sense.
Well, the problem with that, though, is that the theology falls apart on 2 different places.
Yeah.
First off, Peter was never the Bishop of Rome. He was the bishop of Antioch. He founded the Church of Antioch. So historically speaking, he was the first bishop of Antioch. And if you want to interpret the passage that way, then the supremacy belongs with the Antiochian Orthodox Church.
Well, no, I wouldn't agree with you there, because the way I would look at it is this. Peter was the rock. Whatever Peter founded became, so if he founded the Church of Antioch, fair enough, he was the Bishop of Antioch, but then he moved. Peter was crucified upside down in Rome.
I know. There's no evidence that he served as Bishop of Rome. He did select and anoint the first bishop, who was Clement of Rome, was the first bishop. But that's where you guys draw your apostolic authority.
Okay, but if he authorizes another guy in Rome, then he was in Rome. So
right, but
there's another point
where he actually served as a bishop was Antioch.
I'm sure he did. I'm sure he served probably as a bishop wherever he went, because again, he's a bishop, so it doesn't matter where he goes. Where he goes is where he's at. Where he lays his hat is his home, sort of thing. But there's another point that I would argue against you with that, which is, if you look at a lot of the patristic documents, and from both Orthodox and Western, it's pretty much acknowledged that Rome was always considered first among equals.
Right. Rome was doubly apostolic. You had both Peter and Paul who evangelized Rome. And of course, it was the seat of the empire for the first 300 years.
Yeah.
Nobody argues that Rome was the first in honor. The problem falls in saying that the seat of Rome, the Patriarch of Rome, had authority over the rest of the church.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you on that, really. My way of looking at it is pretty simple, and it comes from my experience of martial arts over many, many years. For example, I went up the ranks pretty fast because I was fanatical and whatever. And guys that I started with together, I overtook them by miles. And guys that were already black belts when I wasn't a black belt yet, By the time I got to second Dan, they were still first Dan. So I'd overtaken them in terms of grade. But there were guys that I'd now become second Dan. I was physically better than them, technically better than them, faster, stronger, whatever. But they'd been second Dan longer than me. You know, they were second Dan when I started, and they were still second Dan when I became second Dan. And what would happen in the lineup is, you know, the most senior guy lines up to the left, and they would line up to my left because they were senior to me in seniority. They'd been there long. That's it. You know, they didn't have anything on me physically, but the honorific of having been there longer. Now, what did that mean practically? Practically didn't mean very much. I mean, when we're doing the dojo kumite, you could beat the crap out of each other and that was it. You know, nobody would look at you weird or anything. I mean, we did have a very hierarchical structure. So if you beat up a guy that was sort of higher up the ladder than you, then some of the other higher ups would give you a beating just because, not because you did anything. Nobody would say you did anything wrong. Nobody would tell you like, oh, you're not allowed to beat up a third Dan or a fourth Dan or whatever. But they would have a go at you because you were being disrespectful. So there was, and it was an unsaid thing because if you want to be a hardcore guy and you want to try and beat everybody up, go for it. You know, no one is going to tell you that's wrong, but you're going to get headhunted by all the higher ups, you know. So the way I look at it is very much a similar thing. I would think the Church of Rome would be the one that had, let's say, seniority. Practically, that didn't mean anything. It didn't mean that the bishop in Rome was any more right than one of the bishops in the East or anywhere else. But when it came to, like, let's say, deal breakers, you know, like 3 guys vote one way, 3 guys vote the other way, and the Bishop of Rome gets to choose, okay, guys, I think we should go that way, and then you know, he's like the tiebreaker kind of vote. That's the way I would look at it. Now, over time, you know, I think what happened, the way I see it, is in 1054, the excommunication of the emperor in the East was done by 3 bishops that had no authority. Because the Pope was dead at the time, they didn't know he was dead, so they didn't have any authority to excommunicate anybody. They excommunicated him because they got pissed off on a personal level, and then the emperor got pissed off in turn and excommunicated them. And then by the time the next Pope came to power, it was kind of like long-distance relationship, you know? So it kind of crumbled over time. But in essence, after that, what happened is the Catholic Church basically said, no, we're the best, screw you, and we've got supremacy. But it's kind of like, again, long-distance relationship. No, you're with someone else now, and you're not following my rules, so I'm the boss. You know, it's kind of like a human kind of crappy reaction, you know.
Well, the trouble with that, though, is that there actually was a legitimate reason for the excommunication. In that, so you talk about the papacy being invalid since Vatican II. Mm-hmm. The truth of the matter is that it's been invalid since they adopted the filioque.
Okay, now explain that to me. Explain the filioque bit to me, because I'm kind of ignorant, and I'm pretty sure that most of the people on here don't know what that even means. So,
okay, so the filioque is I think it's actually Latin. It just means and the Son.
Yeah.
It's an addition to the Nicene Creed, where in the passage that speaks about the Holy Spirit, in Orthodoxy we say, and I believe in the Holy Spirit, the Lord, the giver of life, who proceeds from the Father, who with the Father and the Son together is glorified. Roman Catholics say, who proceeds from the Father and the Son. That's the filioque and the Son. The trouble with that is that in the canons of the Third Ecumenical Council, they say that anybody who tries to change the Nicene Creed is anathema. They're cut off. They're cursed. They're done. So that would invalidate the entire papacy up to the point where they tried to add the filioque, which, according to my notes, is 1014.
Okay. So in 1014, the Catholic Church added the filioque. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
That's when when it became official. It was sneaking around for a couple hundred years before that, but the popes had initially rejected it. Pope Leo III said, no, I don't want to do that. That was around the year 900. And then, they kept kicking it around because it was becoming popular. Eventually, Pope Benedict VIII, under pressure from Henry II,
yes,
who helped him become pope after he had been kicked out of being a pope. And
yeah. Oh, the Pope, the history of the papacy. I've just finished reading the book by Julius Norwich about the popes. It's interesting. Yeah.
Well, when Henry II showed up to become the Holy Roman Emperor, and he said, "Hey, you guys aren't doing the filioque. I like the filioque," and the Pope was like, yeah, I kind of owe you big time, so we're going to do the filioque."
Yeah.
Now, where that became a problem is in the discussions with the yeast, they were saying, "Hey, you guys are in heresy. You're messing stuff up, and it needs to change." And then in 1053, the Pope said, "Well, we got these papers that say we're the boss."
Yeah. You know, the thing, having read the history of the popes, of all the popes, and I gotta say, the guy who wrote it is unfortunately dead because I wanted to interview him, but he died a few years ago. And I don't like to speak ill of the dead, but it was a really good book right up until the Vatican II stuff. And then from the Vatican II, it just like went off the deep end. It was like, what the hell? But it's historically very, very decent and quite accurate. He's got a couple of errors. He makes a sort of really funny error in the first 10 pages where he basically tries to say, "Oh, well, I'm not Catholic, but I've got no dog in this fight." And he makes a couple of statements which within 10 pages, he invalidates his own statements. I found that quite hilarious. And then at the end, the 1958 popes and so on, it's quite clear that, this guy was a Protestant, I believe. And it's quite clear that he's hoping for the whole ecumenical, oh, we're all brothers in Jesus kind of thing, which is basically what the Vatican II starts. Vatican II is essentially a Protestant-derived heresy. So you can sort of see that in his, and I think genuinely, probably, he was trying to sort of say, oh, come on, guys, let's all sing Kumbaya, we're all the same kind of thing, which is, of course, anathema to Catholics and Orthodox alike. But, I don't necessarily disagree with what you're saying. The reality of the history of the actual popes, you'd have to be a liar or insane to think that all those popes were, divine human beings. I mean, some of these guys were like, they made like fucking Blackbeard look like a choir boy, honestly, some of these guys were really fucking, they had wild orgies and murders, it was just every human thing that you can think of was in there. But I would say two things. One, I'm not familiar with the history of the metropolitans of the Orthodox Church, but I would gather that there are similar human, failures in that too.
The difference is wherever the Orthodox Church encounters failures, we don't try to glaze over it and claim supremacy. We kick people the hell out.
Yes and no, because when you look under Soviet rule, a lot of the Orthodox metropolitans, Brits and so on, they were essentially what's happening in China now. Right, Bergoglio has now denounced or let go sort of the real Catholics that were in China, and he's put on all these puppet guys that are basically little branches of the state. They're state officialized Catholics, and under the Soviet rule, that was very much the same in the Soviet Union. Now there were good, real Orthodox, which kept the truth, and like the Irish in the monasteries, and like the Chinese right now, because there are real Chinese Catholics that are being persecuted, and they're in hiding, some of them, and so. The fact is, the problem, the way I see it, is humans. Humans are a fucking mess, and that's never going to change. But my approach to it is like, okay, take the filioque, right? let's say that absolutely everything you said was 100% true without any doubt or error, which, to be honest with you, I doubt. I'm sure that if I dig into it, I could find some arguments for the other side, right? But never mind that. Let's just say that you're 100% right. Here's my question to you. What damn difference does it make? Do you honestly think that God looks down on us and says, yep, the Holy Spirit proceeds from me alone, Dave's got it right, and Giuseppe's going to go to hell? I don't think so. It's such a rarefied thing that, and I do believe God is merciful. And what I do believe may be the case, may be that God says, well, Dave is a lot closer to the truth and he can come up to heaven in a couple of days. That guy, he's a fucking mess and he's got to burn in hell for, a few millennia, and then maybe we'll see about getting him up here. But the fact is, I believe with as much of me as is possible. And in a sense, that's the argument that Vox and Owen make, right? Which is, it doesn't matter what denomination you are, as long as you're Christian, we should be on the same side. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that argument at all, for a very simple reason: human nature. Human nature needs tradition. Human nature needs ritual. Human nature needs an actual, something that goes back in time, that gets passed on from father to son and mother to daughter and so on. They need that. And there is probably a very good reason for that. That is a metaphysical reason, beyond the simple human psychological needs. And I think it's absolute lunacy to think that, Protestantism will save the West. They won't. Because Protestantisms are like 40,000 guys at best, right? Because the minute that one of them disagrees with another guy, I'll say, well, I've got the new, Church of the Second Baptized Christ of the Seventh-day Adventist and whatever Baptist, it's nonsense. No one is gonna follow that stuff, apart from the 3 guys who got brainwashed by the cult leader, And again, even if you're an agnostic or an atheist and you want to think that all religions are nonsense, I've already discussed this before anyway on I think it's video 16, the Clown World one. I've already mentioned this, that it doesn't matter. Even if you don't believe in any religion, look at the people that tried to make paradise on earth without religion. They killed more people in 70 years than all the religious wars put together since the history of mankind, So, no, the best religion is Christianity, end of. And of Christianity, what we know for certain is that both Catholicism and Orthodoxy and the Copts, but the Copts are almost wiped out, they were there from the start. Now, you're going to argue that, but you Catholics deviated a bit. And you know what? I don't even disagree with you. I would say, yeah, the Catholics have got more, let's say, changes, or apparent changes at least, cosmetic changes and maybe even some real changes than the Orthodox. I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that. What I would say to that is, yeah, but look how many attacks the Catholic Church has had compared to the Orthodox, and of what nature. And also look at how many, what the fruits of it are. And I'm not saying that Orthodoxy doesn't have great fruits, it does. But the reality is that Christendom wouldn't exist, basically, without Catholics. So even if you were to say, okay, fine, Christendom wouldn't exist without Catholics, but they're now collapsed, there are only a tiny remnant left, and the so-called, what people think is the Catholic Church, the Novus Orchian Church, has taken over everything and it's perverted everything, so you might as well go Orthodox. I wouldn't even disagree with that logic. I wouldn't disagree with that thinking. But my thought is simply this. I believe the Catholic Church has produced the best results of all the Christian denominations, bar none, by far, by a long margin. And I believe that means something. And the fact that Christianity started with 11 scared guys tells me that numbers are not necessarily the important thing. To be perfectly honest with you, I don't know. When I drop dead, maybe I'll find out whether the Orthodox were closer or the Catholics were closer. You clearly believe that the Orthodox are closer. I don't begrudge you that belief at all. I really don't. I believe that the Catholics are probably closer, but what I really believe is that the Catholics have got the heart of Christianity more nailed down.
Yeah.
I believe that the Orthodox have a little bit more rigidity in their Christianity. And I think Christianity, above all for me, is a living thing. It has to be a living, daily, breathing, moving, fighting, dodging thing. Kind of like Sistema. You know, it's the difference between karate and Sistema in my simple mind, right? Orthodox is more like karate. You go hard, you break your bones, you're bruised every day, you don't bend, you don't deflect, you go through the door. And if the door is made of steel, you die, and you die with honor at the foot of the door. Sistema is more like, I don't want to get bruised. I'm going to dodge. I'm going to move. I'm going to get out. I'm going to find the key to open the door if it's made of steel. If I can kick through it, great. If I can't, I'll look for a window. And so it's a different sort of approach. But I'm not even questioning your historical research. I'm sure that it's correct. I'm just, you know, I know it sounds like sophistry, but it's not, because in a way I'm kind of saying, and this actually happened to me when I started training in Systema, right? I'm basically saying, yeah, you know what, Dave, you're right, but you know what? I'm going to sneak around and slap you in the back of the head. Fuck you. You know, and it's like, initially it's sort of, especially to a Protestant or a binary thinker, it looks like, oh, you're a cheater, you know, you're a damn cheater. I had the exact same experience. One of the first time I trained with these Russian guys, right? We used to do like 50 push-ups every day, like to be at the beginning and at the end. It was like nothing, you know. So it's like, so the Russian guy, first class, and there's like 100 people because it's a seminar. And he goes, okay, do 50 push-ups. So, you know, I get on my nose, I do 50 push-ups, and then I wait, you know, when I'm finished, I'm in. Russian guy goes, how many push-ups did you do? And I was a little bit offended, you know, thinking, what, this guy thinks I didn't do my 50, you know, what the hell? I looked at him and said 50. And the Russian guy looks at me and goes, oh, you're really a stupid guy, aren't you? And he walks off. I was like, what the hell? What was that? Because in his mind, you know, he was trying to teach me something and say, look, dude, nobody was watching you. So you did 50 because you think you're so straight and clever. But the reality is, in a real fight, in a real thing, in the real army, if the guy's not watching you, you don't do 50, you do 10, and you conserve your energy because you don't know what's coming next, you know, which was a more real way of dealing with. And I think the Catholic Church has had that. The Catholic Church has had to deal with the real world, with the infested, broken, worldly stuff of the world. I think more than the Orthodox Church, which is why we have so many worldly crap. Like, you know, most people don't know that a cardinal, that's not a thing, you know. We only have priests and bishops, same like you guys. But a cardinal is a worldly denomination. And even Pope is a worldly denomination. A Pope is just a bishop. But because you need a hierarchical structure to run things in the physical world, in the material world of Satan, you kind of need this pyramidical structure to get shit done, you know. So
would you argue that to say that Orthodoxy has not had that sort of structure and we've got along just fine?
Depends what you mean by fine. Because you guys got your ass handed to you pretty badly by the Saracens compared to the Catholics. And
that's true. That's true.
And the Catholics had to come and save your ass. It's also true that in coming to save your ass, we also kind of, you know, did a little bit of pillaging and raping, and, you know, because, well, that shit happens, you know.
The thing with that, though, is we're kind of global, and the 2 or 3 times you guys tried to invade Russia, the Russian Orthodox kicked your asses right back to where you came from.
Anybody that tries to invade Russia is just fucking stupid, you know, so they deserve everything that comes to them, really. But, you know, what I'm saying is also, if you look at Catholicism, Catholics monks essentially, for the most part, invented science. You know, the scientific method was essentially Catholic monks. So, you know, and again, you know, it sounds like we're in a pissing contest, but I don't think we are. I simply believe that the Catholic Church has produced a lot more concrete progress and real progress, not like blue-haired whale progress, real progress in terms of human dignity, of human freedom, of justice, beauty. The Orthodox also have very beautiful churches and icons and so on. Not so much to my taste. I don't know if it's cultural, genetic, or what. I do prefer the old Catholic churches. That I find them more beautiful, and the paintings and so on. I find Catholic art more inventive and varied and interesting. The Orthodox art tends to be repetitive to a certain extent. So, to me that's why I kind of chose Catholic. I mean, I've got a lot of Russian friends, a lot of Orthodox friends, and as a general human thing, I probably prefer the average Orthodox believer is a more fun guy to hang around with, usually, generically. It takes a rather evolved Catholic to have the same level of enjoyment of life to a certain extent. But when you do find an evolved Catholic, then they're really cool. They're really fun to hang out with. The average Russian Orthodox is like, yes, you drink, it's no problem. Yes, maybe you use some prostitute now and then. It's like, what? But you're Christian. That's wrong. That's just bad. Yes, it's bad. It's bad. It's true. It's bad. But it's like, what? They've got a sort of a natural role. And I'm not saying that's good, right? I'm not saying those are the good guys. What I'm saying is they are genuinely Christian, though. Those guys will stand and fight. They're not gonna. I've seen Orthodox Christians that will drink people under the table, that will get into fights, whatever. But try and tell them, you're Jesus. That's a mistake. You're taking your life in your hands, because they will get punched. You maybe can have sex with their wife and they don't care too much, but you say something wrong about Jesus Christ, you're gonna die or repent, and there is something to that, that's, you can't deny that. Well, the average Catholic is not really like that. The guys like me are, that's why I get along with those kind of Orthodox. The old Catholics are, but the sort of half lukewarm Catholics are sort of like, well, you have to be polite and you have to turn the other cheek. And I'm like, dude, fight. Knights of Malta, remember them? So, yeah, I don't know. That's what I'm saying. At the end of the day, to be perfectly blunt, between you and me, I've made my choice like you've made yours.
Yeah.
The only way we'll know is when we're dead. Who was closer to the truth. And maybe neither one of us is closer to the truth. Maybe we're both there.
The one argument I want to give to that is that currently the church you attend, you guys are not in communion with Rome.
Absolutely not. No.
You are in communion with other churches, but you've rejected the papacy since Vatican II.
Yes.
As invalid, rightfully so.
Yeah. Under
the same logic, then the papacy should also be invalid since 1014, when they instituted the filioque.
I'm gonna ask my priest that. I will ask that question.
That far, all of a sudden you're Orthodox.
Well, you know what? I don't know. I did mention to the priest. This was a while back, so I don't want to get it wrong because I don't remember the details. But I did mention to him something like, well, what about the Orthodox? They're not that far from us. They've got a couple of things. And he said, yes, they're not that far from us, and their sacraments are valid, which surprised me. I didn't know that. He said their sacraments are valid, but they're mistaken. So officially, the position of the Catholic Church is basically the same as mine, which is, and I mean, mine comes from having spoken to the priest about that. But there are two things that you've mentioned to me that I will definitely ask. One is this about the filioque in 1014. The other one is the not drinking of the wine, or the blood of Christ when you have the Eucharist, because that was a question I had from the get-go. I didn't know that was like that. So when I got baptized, I was like, hey, where's the cup with the blood? What's going on here? And I actually haven't asked since, because again, there's there's people that think, you need to confess every week and go to Holy Mass every week. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm not saying that's wrong at all. If you can do that, great. But you got to keep in mind that the guys who did the Crusades, they got to do Holy Communion maybe once a year, if they were lucky. Some of those guys went years without it. And look what they did. You're going to tell me that the Knights of Malta, weren't proper Catholics because they didn't do Holy Mass every Sunday or whatever, because they couldn't, because they were fighting, for I don't know how many months. No, I think the intention must mean something. So, but now the thing is, you can also get intention wrong, right? You can have people that have a lot of intention, but it's pointed in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And that's where I think the Orthodox and the Catholics are both far, far superior position than any of the other denominations. The strong intention of an Orthodox or a Catholic is pointed in the right direction far more than any Protestant, from the get-go is going to be. Now, I'm not saying we don't get outliers. I think, for example, Vox is definitely that guy. In conversation with him, I haven't really found, not that we've spoken a lot about it. It would be a very interesting conversation I would like to have with him in more depth. But as far as we've discussed it, I didn't see huge differences between his belief system and mine, to be honest. And when when I told him I got baptized, because I was at his place shortly afterwards, and I said, and he goes, "Oh, great! What?" And I said, "I got baptized Catholic." And you just saw his face. He was like all excited, like, "Yeah, Catholic." And he just went, "Oh," sort of like. I said, no, Fox, hear me out. These are proper Catholics. He goes, he was like kind of half listening by this point. So I said, no, listen, you remember that French priest that got killed by two Muslims while he was doing the Mass, that 8-year-old guy? He goes, yeah. He goes, well, the guys that I got baptized with wrote an article on that. And they basically said, well, was he a martyr or was this just desserts for, being a heretic? And she was like, really? He goes, yeah. They're like hardcore. They've got nothing, they don't talk to the Pope at all. They don't think the Pope is valid. When you're thinking Catholic, think 1095. Then you kind of got the kind of Catholics I'm talking about. And it was like, oh, tell me a bit more. And I told him a bit more, and he goes, I could get on board with those Catholics. So, I think he was like everybody else, sickened by the churchianity and the novus. It's not even churchianity. In the case of the fake Catholic Church, it's actually Satanism, Yeah. So, yeah.
But there is, what you're doing is, there's two options. There's three, but the first two, when the Vatican is, invalid, they're corrupt, they're evil, they're satanic, there's two options. First one is preferable. That's Inquisition.
Yes.
That's Grand Inquisitor Joe Kurgan.
Mate,
roll up the Vatican with a guillotine and some fire.
I've been testing the waters with my priest the last time he was here, right? Because they only come over once a month. It's a mission here. It's like they've got a base in Belgium, in Italy, a few, but in London they come once a month. They send the guy to do the Holy Mass, and it's the same guy that baptized me. He's a young guy, but he's hardcore, but he presents well because he knows he's a priest and he has to stick. But I test him, with some other guys there, and they were talking about a random bunch of things. And I was like, well, all the problems that we're facing in the modern world, kids at school being taught LGBT nonsense, all that stuff. And I just threw it out there. I said, well, we just have to build up the numbers, not because we need the numbers. The only reason we need the numbers is to start the Crusade 2.0, and properly this time, Don't stop when you get to Jerusalem. Make sure you clean the whole place out. And the priest was standing next to me, but I did it on purpose, to see his reaction. And he was like, he was all for it, really. So those are the kind of priests you want.
The second option is essentially where you're at right now, and that's Reformation. Is you're gathering like-minded people. You're saying, I don't agree with this, and we're going to fight against it and make changes. That's Reformation.
But you see, now I would disagree with you. I wouldn't say that's Reformation. I'm saying that's education. I'm not changing from the Catholic Church. I'm teaching the ones that have been deceived. Hey, you've gone off the road. This is the road. This is the path. Come back to the right path. So I'm not reforming anything. I'm sticking to the original. And again, the document that I stick by, that Canon Law of 1917, that's an accumulation of documents over 2 millennia that have been compiled. That's what I stick with. That and, whatever, Council of Trent, good enough for me. And I mean, don't get me wrong, there's some stuff in the Council of Trent that I don't particularly agree with, because the Council of Trent, you need to understand, was a response to, Martin Luther and Henry VIII. Was a response to the rebellion of the Protestants. So it obviously comes down a little bit hard on certain things, and it's sort of almost, the pendulum swings a bit, maybe too much in a certain direction in order to prevent certain things of the Protestants. So there might be some things in there which I think, well, is that really correct, or did you guys just go a little bit overboard because you were trying to correct, And there are things like that. For example, Vatican I is something I'm looking into a little bit more. And if I got it right, I'm not 100% I got it right, but in Vatican I, if I got it right, Pius XII, which was the last pope, he was the last honest pope, and he knew what was coming, because that guy wrote encyclicals essentially saying, I mean, it's amazing if you read it. This guy basically said, you're getting transgenderism, you're getting all the stuff we've got now. This was like 1905 or something like that. That's when he wrote the encyclical, and he was saying, this is coming. They're attacking us. They're already inside the gates. You got to fight this. And he was hardcore rigid. He tried to stick to the old ways. And I believe that it was him that said papal infallibility, because up to that point, papal infallibility, there was no real such thing. And if you look at the history of the popes, it's pretty evident that, these guys were definitely far from infallible. And apparently this papal infallibility thing got passed by him alone. The cardinals didn't even agree with him. So it was almost looks, I don't know, I need to look into it more, but it almost looks like it was a human reaction to like a spiritual overcoming that he was trying to prevent. So I don't know. I need to look into that a bit more. But, there's clearly, again, there's some people that will argue, oh, but Vatican II documents were only between 63 and 65. So why are you saying from 1958? Well, because the first, the Pope that came in 1958, they're the guys that designed the Vatican II documents. They're the ones that put it together. They're the ones that wrote some of those things. And if you're charitable, in Catholic thought, you should try and be charitable. So there are some people that are saying, oh, well, but you're not 100% sure. You can't know the heart of a man. Therefore, you have to maybe sort of allow that the popes up until 1965 were okay. But no, I don't at all, because there's another rule of the Catholic Church, which is if something is suspect, don't touch it. Don't get involved with it. Don't mix up with it. If something is not sure, if you're not sure if something is clean or dirty, don't stick your hand in it. So while you might say, if you want to be charitable, you'd say, well, the popes between 58 and 65, we're not sure. So we'll just leave them aside. Personally, I'm very sure, because those fuckers are the ones that wrote up that nonsense. So.
It's Janice. She's going in.
Oh, sorry, man. I should watch my mouth a bit more.
The third option is Western Rite Orthodoxy.
Yeah, I don't even know what that is, man.
When you get to a point where you're like, I'm sick of the papacy and I don't care about the filioque, all of a sudden you're Western Rite Orthodoxy. That's what happened when some Anglicans and some Catholics, their entire congregation, they said, okay, we don't like Vatican II. We don't like what's going on. We don't like the lesbian bishops. We're done with the filioque. What's up? And the Orthodox Church said, okay, yeah, we'll have you come, and you can do things your style, because for 1,000 years the West with Orthodox. So they have Gregorian chant. They got clean-shaven, priests, and most of them are in Latin. All of the Western Rite Orthodox churches in France actually are in Latin.
I got a problem with that though, because the Anglicans are deep heretics because Henry VIII. So.
Yeah, but when they come to us, they're good.
Yeah, nah. I mean, to me, Protestantism is, and the more I look into it, the more it becomes patently obvious that Protestant, again, people are dumb, so they don't get it. But I'm not saying every Protestant is a demon-infested Satanist. They're mostly deceived, but the reality is that Protestantism was absolutely a Satan-inspired thing. It was the secularization of Christianity, and that's what it's done, and that's what it's achieved, and it's been very successful for the enemy. So I want nothing to do with them, to be honest. I'm not gonna accept, because the way I see it is like, well, like somebody asked me a question on the one of the videos, and it was sort of like, but what about these guys? They're really close to you, and I'm like, my question was like, well, how much sewage is acceptable to you in your ice cream?
Yeah. The biggest problem with the Protestants is they have largely forsaken the sacraments.
Oh yeah.
And that's actually something I kind of wanted to get to on the whole, the keys or the keys of the kingdom to St. Peter and everything, was the scripture where Jesus is talking to Peter, and that everybody likes to quote, is that but he turned. He says, and I also say to you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. And I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. That's the number one thing that Roman Catholics like to quote about the supremacy of the papacy. There's give and take. The Orthodox say that, yes, he was speaking to Peter, but the authority that he gave belonged to all of the apostles. And there's other scriptures that back that up. There's more going on there, though, than just giving authority to Peter. Yeah. What he's doing right there,
I don't disagree with that. Yeah.
He's establishing authority with the bishopry. The 12 apostles were the first bishops of the church.
Yeah.
And he's giving them authority to give the sacraments of the church.
Don't disagree with anything else.
The body and blood in Christ for the remission of sins. Now, the Protestants, they're all like, I don't need no bishop. I can give communion to myself in my kitchen table and some crackers and some roasted grape juice, That's completely incorrect. Jesus gives that authority to the apostles.
Yeah.
And the Protestant definition is that we're all we're all servants of Jesus, and that scripture was for all of us, and that's not the case.
No, it's not. Yeah.
He, in the scripture where in Luke where it says he sends them out 2 by 2 to go evangelize and prepare the way for him. There were 70 people that he sent out, 70. And then on the day of Pentecost, we see that there's 120 people. He had a lot more followers than just the 12 apostles.
Of course, yes.
But this authority is only given to the 12 apostles.
Yeah.
And it's repeated again, the same authority in Matthew 18:18, where he's talking, and this is not just to Peter, this is to all the apostles.
Yeah.
He said, assuredly I say to you, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. And then he repeats a similar thing in John 20.
You don't have to convince me, man. I'm on your side. I agree with everything you've said. I don't disagree with a word of what you said. My only point to that is
it's the authority that the Roman Catholics like to claim that he gave to Peter it's scripturally to all the apostles.
Oh,
and then there's another verse.
No, I don't disagree with that, but it is also a fact that Peter was the leader of the apostles.
Oh, yes. That's actually something we agree on. He was the leader of the apostles.
Yeah, so it's, again, to me, it's the same. It's the martial art class. Yeah, you're all black belts, but this guy's the founder of the, that guy's the leader of the black belts.
There's a verse, though, that, should be a bullet to the head to the supremacy thing, where James and John...
I don't agree with supremacy. Let me just clarify something here. Up until there was that, long-distance relationship split between the East and the West, it was accepted for over 1,000 years that all the bishops were the same. The bishop in Rome was considered the same as the bishop in Antioch or the bishop in Moscow, whatever it was at that time.
Yeah.
The only difference was that all the bishops agreed that the Bishop of Rome was first among equals. And to me, that's all that there is to it. So,
right.
The way I see it, and I don't know, this is probably wrong as per dogmatic Catholic belief, probably, I don't know, I'll check with the priest as well. But as far as I see it, up until that point, there wasn't the filioque and all the other 2 or 3 little things that we disagree on. And that was one thing. And there were arguments that happened, in the year 500, in the year 600, in the year 900, whatever. There was a bit of a thing where, like, one of the other bishops says, well, no, screw you, why the hell should you listen to the bishop in Rome? And some of the other bishops are like, dude, that's what we all agree, So I know that you and your two of your mates think that you need to go left, but we and the Pope in Rome and, whatever, the bishop in Rome saying you have to go right, so go right. And this happened over the centuries. It happened a couple of times. So it was accepted for a long time. And there wasn't, then some of the popes got a bit uppity because humans, again. So some of them were like, no, but I'm the bishop in Rome, so you need to do what I tell you, regardless. And it was like, no, just because you're the bishop in Rome doesn't mean you're not the boss of us. You're just another bishop. So there was a bit of this going on. And again, to me, it's like long-distance relationship. Eventually, those things, become, they fester over time. So,
well, I'll tell you that 90% of that was because of the West being jealous of the Eastern Empire. You know how Kwanzaa was invented by racist blacks in the 60s because they didn't want to share a holiday with whitey?
What? No, I have no idea what this is about. Sorry, man.
Kwanzaa, Google it.
Okay.
Basically, the same thing happened when the Roman West, the Roman Empire in the West, they fell, and then the Eastern Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, was still cooking.
Yeah.
The West was like, okay, well, we're not happy with all the power and influence the East has, so we're going to do our own thing. We're going to make a Holy Roman Emperor in the West.
Yeah.
And it was an intentional attempt, for political reasons, to separate power from the East versus the West.
Sure.
And it was around the same time that the Holy Roman Empire was born, that all the major issues between the West and East started coming up theologically, like the filioque, they're using unleavened bread for the sacrament. They're preventing priests from getting married. They're denying the Eucharist to infants and babies. All the major theological things, they all started cropping up, at this point when they decided they wanted to have their own emperor.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. Again, I'll just remind you of the audio because I think you're a lot louder than I am. So I know you're a big guy, but I don't necessarily disagree with you. I think, it's quite obvious that, again, the history of the papacy throughout the millennia, it's quite clear there was a lot of political maneuvering. And I don't think that the East was free from that either, because again, if you look at the original first, second, and third Crusades, I think the Byzantine emperor was a pretty sneaky guy himself. He did certain things to try and get the Catholics to help him, but not actually get anything out of it. He basically said, "Oh yeah, you guys go out and kill everybody and save us, and then you get nothing." And that was kind of, So yeah, again, humans, man. The thing is, the reality of it is, if it does come to another crusade or whatever, you and me are not going to be the problem. We're going to be in the trenches fighting until one of us dies and the other ones will die standing next to him, sort of thing. The problem is going to be the guys above us that tell us, "Oh, you're going to go there," and it's going to be a bit more difficult this time for them, for the guys above us, because there's the internet. We're a bit smarter. We've got a lot of stuff, which is why I'm saying Protestantism isn't going to work. What's going to work is Orthodoxy and Catholicism, and I don't believe it's going to be one or the other. It may be that Catholicism truly collapses entirely, because I think right now, if you were to take a census of what you and I would call good, honest Orthodox and good, honest Catholics, I believe that the number of Catholics is less currently. But I believe there are millions, if not a billion, of disgruntled Catholics, cradle Catholics, apostate Catholics, unhappy Catholics that haven't realized what happened to the church. That once those guys get educated, once those guys realize what happened and why the church is filled with pedophilic scum and it's no longer the Catholic Church, once that they realize that, there's going to be a wave. There's going to be a wave of millions of these guys that all of a sudden will be like, oh, now we're back to being Catholics. So it's, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to set the spark that lights the fire, sort of thing, and then we'll see.
Yeah, the conspiracy theorists suggest that the CIA was involved in the convergence of the Roman Catholic Church.
Dude, it's not even a conspiracy; it's fact. I've been reading up, because I'm going to do a documentary on the Catholic Church, and I've been reading up on that, and there's some incredible resources of detailed stuff with names and dates, and it's like I'm gonna have to spend some time to go through it all, because there's a lot of documentation. But it's absolutely, the weird thing is, I figured this out when I was 16 in England. There was the Oxford Dictionary, which was like 13 volumes. They're like 2 foot tall, bound in leather, and like the pages are like onion skin and with tiny writing, filled. And I looked up in there Illuminati, because at that time, Robert Anton Wilson had come out with the science fiction-y type story about the Illuminati. And I read it up. I just looked to see, because there was all sorts of words in this. Any word that's ever been in the English language is in there. It's got like 600,000 words. So I looked up Illuminati, and sure enough, there was an entry, and it went on for like half a page. And it was like, oh, this was started in 17 whatever by Weishaupt, and these guys were really evil, Luciferian, blah, blah, blah. And it went on and it gave names and places. And I was like, oh shit, this was real? So I started looking into that. And then more recently now, because of the research I'm doing, it's absolutely without a doubt that Freemasonry is Luciferian, was designed from the start to infiltrate the church. I do believe absolutely there are also supernatural events in it. Now, the average Freemason, I worked with a guy who became a Freemason. I worked with a guy that... when I was in South Africa, I was doing the bodyguard stuff. We hired this guy at one point temporarily, who was apparently a Freemason, and he told us. And the other guy that I was working with said, "Oh, I want to become a Freemason." And I was stayed away from all that shit. I got approached by Freemasons, Rosicrucians, you name it. Because I don't know why. And I've always stayed away from anything that's like secret. It's like, nah. If you got secrets, you got something to hide. I don't want to know. I don't want to be part of your stupid little Gnostic stuff. And I was a kind of atheist, Zen agnostic, whatever, The thing is that the low echelon guys don't know anything. But the higher up you go into this thing, and their way they operate is absolutely like the Hollywood stuff, where, you got to rape and murder a child on video so that they've got something on you, and then you got to keep doing, That's how it works. And it was absolutely, the Catholic Church documented this. There's a guy if you go on Wikipedia, there's a guy called Benigni, like the actor, but he was actually a priest, who created, it's very interesting, because Sodalitium Pianum, which is Latin for solid plane, but it also means, so dalitium can also mean like solidarity, like friendship, and pianum can also be a slang version of Pius the 12th. So it was like, we're the friends of Pius, of the real Pope. And basically it was like a secret service within the Catholic Church, and they were compiling dossiers of homosexual priests, of Freemasonry priests. Now, it's a Catholic dogma that if you're a Freemason, you can't be part of the clergy. You're not even accepted to take the host. If you're known to be a Freemason, you're known to be for the enemy. And they had Freemasons in the Catholic Church working as priests and stuff. And this guy was compiling dossiers of them, but it was too late. They were so infiltrated that they kind of dissolved his little, but if you read in Wikipedia, they say that Benigno was like a hard, it was like the alt-right of the 1920s or whatever, And it's like, he was actually a priest. He was actually a decent priest trying to stop the infiltration. But they make it sound like he was a full-on Nazi or something, It's really interesting stuff. There's a lot of documentation that proves that, basically. So,
yeah.
Which
the Roman Catholic Church gets a lot of flack when it comes to burning heretics at the stake, but
we didn't
when
burn
you
enough.
look at the result, like what happens when you let it go? Like this guy Josh Harris.
Oh, I actually only know what I've read on the internet, a couple of articles. I don't know his whole story. I don't know why he's become like, is he like gone gay now, or is he just banging randoms, or what?
Well, he's talking about a gay pride parade, but if the church as a whole was still burning heretics at the stake, you wouldn't have this Jesus is my boyfriend stuff.
No.
You wouldn't have this, Jesus just wants me to be happy, and that all he wants me to do is just love everybody.
That's so astonishing. It's so irritating and so astonishing to me, because I knew this when I wasn't even thinking.
The guy who is a mega church preacher is divorcing his wife and becoming gay because there's absolutely nothing in his religion that has any kind of like standard.
Yeah.
I would argue so much to say that he doesn't know Jesus Christ at all.
Absolutely.
He served Buddy Christ.
Yeah.
He served Buddy Christ who just wants you to be happy.
Yeah, but you see, that's exactly what Vatican II is. It's the deception of putting people, they're all Josh Harrises. They're so-called nominal Catholic now. They're all Josh Harrises. They go to the church, they eat the little bread, and they like say their Hail Marys, and what do you believe? There's a very easy way to find out if a guy's Catholic. Put a gun to his head and say, is Jesus Christ Lord? And if you say yes, I'm going to pull the trigger. If the guy say yes, he's a Catholic. If he says no, he's not. It's so simple.
If the church period was still burning heretics at the stake, then Joshua Harris, his soul would be safe right now. But as we speak, he's going to hell.
Well, I don't disagree with you at all. But the thing that I would say about the guy like Joshua Harris, I would say I kind of feel sorry for him, to be honest, because he was deceived from the start. I mean, what chance did that guy have? He was born in a hardcore Protestant family where he got brainwashed from the start, and he believed all that shit, with no foundation. He believed that, like, I did a video recently where one of the Sir Hamster, which I don't know if he's one of the ilk or whatever. I know he's a moderator on Vox's thing, and he's a binary thinking idiot, because I basically said, look, yes, no sex before marriage, that is the rule. I spent like 10 minutes explaining, look, that's the rule. Don't get it wrong. That's a rule, right? But if you start out, being born Amish, fine. That rule is fine for you. It's going to work, all right? Or if you're born in, whatever, buttfuck Nebraska, where there's you and 3 other people that are all Catholics and they all go to the same church and they all believe in no sex before marriage, fine. But if you grow up in the East End of London or, the Bronx in New York, what, you think that you're going to not have sex before marriage and find your way out of that? No. You're a rat in a sewer, and you got to work your way out of the sewer. You're not going to work your way out of the sewer by magically saying, I'm not going to eat shit because I am an evolved rat. You die. The other rats will eat you alive. You're a rat. You're a rat, a mangy rat, and you got to work your way up to the higher levels of the sewer where, the shit's a bit cleaner and fresher. And then slowly you get out of the sewer and maybe you can eat trash for a while, Again, I'm not saying that that's the right way. What I'm saying is it's kind of analogous to I read a blog post once, which I think Moira posted, about an ex-gay guy. And he was like, I didn't want to be gay anymore, and I knew it was wrong, and he'd been abused like most gay people and whatever. But he couldn't stop. His brain was now wired to having sex with men, and that's where his lust went, and he couldn't stop. And he was saying, when I tried to go to church and I tried to speak to people, they would just tell me, no, that's it, cold turkey, you got to stop all that stuff, and you got to be. I said, I couldn't do that, and I couldn't do it, and I was like, man, I'm gonna find my own way. And he said, so I didn't stop having sex with men, I cut it down. I tried to have it less and less and less, and then I tried to make it less perverse and less twisted, and eventually I kind of could stop for long periods of time. And then eventually I could stop long enough that I started, no, I want to try and date a woman, I want to try and meet a woman. And then I met a woman, then I had sex with a woman, and then eventually I married her, and now he's married, has had kids, and he's no longer gay presenting in any way. And he says, that's how I got out. And there was nobody telling me this. I had to find my own way out. And he was right in this, because he was saying, for other gay guys that are in my situation, if you don't have, the mentality to keep finding your own way, you'll get depressed, because on one side you're getting told no, 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 and on the other side you don't want to be there either. And I kind of see where he's coming from. You can't take a drug addict who's been doing heroin for 10 years and say, right, we're going cold turkey in the Kalahari Desert where you will only drink fresh water and mangoes. He'll die. You got to weed him off. And again, I'm not saying it's the correct way, okay, whatever. You get people like myself included, or like Paul, whatever. They fall off the horse, go blind for 4 days, and never kill Christians again. There's many, many ways. But if you're going to approach it as a human being in the human world, I think that's a more sensible sort of approach,
Yeah, absolutely. I had a situation like that with myself. My wife and I, we both been divorced before we got together, and in regular Catholicism, that's kind of a major no-no.
Oh, dude, I wouldn't be able to be married if I'd been Catholic, because I've been divorced twice, but I wasn't Catholic, so they didn't count.
Yeah, well, we had to have our case presented to the patriarch of the Orthodox Church of America, actually.
Oh.
He had to examine our case and then give us the okay. But in the course of us getting married, we actually got pregnant. And big no-no, right? I know. But the grace of the Orthodox Church, the absolute intimacy of confessing to my priest, of him hearing my sins, and giving me a measure of penance so that I could be right again, and then going through that and making myself right. I mean,
it's freeing, isn't it? It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's absolutely freeing.
The funny thing is that when I wasn't Christian or even thinking, I used to think of all the denomination of Christianity, I honest to God used to think Catholicism was the most absurd. So, God has a very funny sense of humor. But, and I used to think of the many crazy things that Catholics, those insane people do. Confession is the most absurd thing ever. And now I'm finding confession is the most, one of the better sacraments, because you're going to have to see that priest. You're going to have to tell him what you did wrong. And what's the point of doing that if you're going to lie? So you're not going to lie. And it's like, shit, if I do that, then I got to confess it. And it makes you a better human being. I don't care what anybody says. It's like training. It's the same like training. When you step to the dojo door, you know that if you behave like a coward, you're going to get beaten more. So you stop behaving like a coward. It's
the Protestants think you're not close to people can't forgive you of your sins. No, that's not what happens.
Yeah, that's absolutely.
You're not getting forgiveness from the priest. You're not getting any of that from the priest. I mean, in layman's terms, it's like your coach you're going to him saying, hey, these are the things I've messed up. And he gives you advice and says, okay, well, this is what you got to do to get right. Do this, and then you'll be at this level where you know you're good, and you could take communion and be forgiven.
That's a brilliant analogy, actually, because essentially what the priest says is, listen, the reason you messed up is because you didn't follow rule A, play B, and rule X. And that's what you need to do. These are the rules that you need to follow. So now, in order to learn that stuff, you need to go and train here, and you need to go do that, and you need to do... It's a very good analogy. You're right. Yeah. It's exactly like a coach telling you the reason you messed up is because you didn't follow the rules of the game. So now go practice those rules until you get it right. So it's yeah. Look, I don't know if we did. I hope we achieved what we wanted to achieve, which was like go pretty hard at each other. And I wanted the average Protestant to see that, or whatever, it doesn't matter, Protestant, Anglican, or agnostic, atheist. The reality is that you're one of the people that I know with absolute certainty. We live on other sides of the planet, but if it came to the famous crusade, there's no doubt in my mind, man. We would be sharing a foxhole and either both dying in that foxhole or taking over the next foxhole and the next one and the next one, because.
Absolutely. And if it ever gets to Inquisition, man, I'll be there with my pliers.
Oh, dude. What people don't know about the Inquisition is funny as well. That's another one of the little, the more I think of stuff, I want to try and keep this documentary to like a reasonable hour or something like that. But there's so much stuff you want to put in there. Like everybody, I thought the Inquisition, they were just sadistic, evil bastards. And look, there probably were a couple of sadistic, evil bastards, but one thing that people don't understand, is like Catholic priests, a Catholic priest that had, that molested a child in the late 1800s or whatever, he would be killed. That guy would not make it to jail. The community of that church he would disappear. He would just, oh, priest is gone, we need another one. That's it. And the kid would know, the child would know what happened to the priest. Which saves that child, because that child is the men would drag that, and there's been cases of this recorded, I think there was one. Anne Barnhart had on one of her podcasts, she had the details of it. I don't remember the details of it, but basically that's what happened. This priest raped a kid or something, like a 10-year-old boy or something. And the boy went and told his dad or whatever, and his dad got some men. They got the priest. They said, right, put your affairs in order. You got 5 minutes. And they basically strung him up. They killed him. And the boy was there, and they told the boy, you did nothing wrong. This guy did wrong. This is what happens to him. They killed the priest. And then they called the sheriff up. And they said, right, that guy did this. That's what happened. End of. And the sheriff was like, yep, just call up another priest. Nobody got arrested. And, when they sent that, I think they might have sent some federal guys investigating. It was all like, what do you want? Go away. He got what he deserved. And that was that, end of. So that's what used to happen. And that's, that's one case, but there's plenty of cases of, where a priest that did that did not get to jail. And that's absolutely correct, because a priest, like a cop or a soldier, whatever, they've taken vows, they've put themselves in a position of authority over others, and spiritual authority, which is far more important than just, worldly authority. So that sort of thing just did not happen. And again, what people don't understand about burning heretics at the stake, they just sort of think, oh, that's evil. I absolutely, I'm not kidding. I'm not joking. I absolutely believe pedophiles, I'd want a strong level of proof, so it's not just like some 14-year-old girl says, oh, he raped me, and that's it, the guy gets burnt at the stake. No, because there should be enough evidence to prove that something happened. But if that happened, a guy who rapes little kids, burn him at the stake alive in the public square and use slightly wet wood so it takes longer. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, you're a sadistic, psychopathic freak. No, I'm a Catholic. There's a very good theological reason why you should burn people at the stake. Because if you shoot them in the back of the head, there's no chance for them to repent. But if you're taking 4 hours to become a bit of a roast, Sunday roast, in those 4 hours, you've got time to think a little bit about why you're being burnt alive and what's happening to you and why it's happening to you. And that gives you an opportunity to truly repent. You know, the fire helps you to really get there. So it sounds sadistic, but in actual fact, it's an act of mercy. I'm not saying that everybody that got burnt at the stake got burnt at the stake correctly. Like, for example, Joan of Arc, you know, that was clearly a miscarriage of justice of the highest degree, and that's why she's a saint, patron saint of France. But so I'm not saying that everybody got burnt at the stake deserved to be burnt at the stake. I'm sure there was some evil things that went on, but for the most part, you know, if you got burnt at the stake, for the most part, there was a really good reason for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, this went, again, as usual, a bit longer than oh, geez, we've been going for an hour and 20. I wanted this to be 20 minutes, but anyway, yeah, we're both, well, I'm more verbose than you are by far, so it's my fault, really. But okay, I'll try and read up on find out from my priest about those two things, the filioque and the drinking of the blood of Christ at the Eucharist. Because that one disturbs me, you know. I'm still pondering about that one. I'm not sure what happened there. Thank you very much, and I'm sure we'll speak again soon. And you should start a channel, man. You should, like, you know, get out there.
Thought about it, but I realized I don't actually have that much to say.
Well, you see, that's the thing. You actually do, because I know from the flame wars we have online that you know, I think. You're kind of, you know, people expect me to be like the Rottweiler. They just know, like, oh, well, you say anything and that guy just goes at you and, like, doesn't stop. But you kind of, like, quietly just bang, give them a hammer in the forehead that they can't recover from. And then they're like, sort of think, but oh, where's this coming from? And I think there's also, because you're kind of quiet, there's the expectancy is, oh, you know, Dave won't mind, you know, he's just a good guy. And then all of a sudden it's like, doom. They just got hammered. I don't know where it comes from. So I don't know. I think you do have a lot to say, but I've also noticed reading up on your A Case for Mary website on Facebook, and I really like your commentary on the New Testament and stuff like that. There's insights in there that you have, which are, you know, I think they're a lot deeper than. I don't read the Bible that much, to be honest. You know, I read the bits that I need to sort of know a little bit about, but I haven't read the Bible cover to cover. You know, I open, well, maybe I've come close, but, you know, I certainly haven't started from beginning to end, and I know you have a few times. So, you know, I really enjoy your commentary. It's very. And I can't wait for the next book, which is going to be, we're going to do that on Warrior Monk.
Yeah, it's going to be called A Case for Tradition.
Yeah,
it's going to dissect the 5 Protestant solas.
Oh, I can't wait for that one. I think I'll have to read that one at night with a drink, just to savor it.
You're a beta reader on that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, you know, the cool thing about your books is that they're polite and well written, unlike mine, which Daniel Ennis gave me a review that's just brilliant. That's awesome. Like, I think what his statement was like, I think what can be said about this book is that we have discovered a class that all role-playing games have missed to date. The theologian berserker. It was just awesome. Every time I read it, I laugh. But yeah, so Dave is much more family-friendly and polite, and yet hits just as hard. So I strongly suggest get A Case for Mary. All you heretics out there that think we worship Mary, get the book. Good night, my friend. I'm going to go.
All right, buddy. Good night.
Cheers. Bye.